Well, Garba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President of Media and Publicity, is still in the studio. Just before we went on break, I was trying to get the perspective of the presidency in terms of what precisely is going on in Kaduna.
Well, so many things have gone wrong, including, as I said earlier, the breakdown of society, and that really has to be rebuilt. There is security, infringement, law and order is being intensified. I mean, that itself is being done, but certainly, as I said, it is not going to solve all of the problems. Beyond this, I think that there's also a lot to worry about concerning politics and religiosity, and even media, coverage of the crisis in southern Kaduna. I think it needs to be more enlightened, balanced, and even-handed. It's an intercommunal crisis, communities fighting one another. When you read the press, it's as if perhaps just one side of, the victim's story is being told. They are Muslims, they are Christians, they kill each other in Kaduna. When people report as if, there's only one part of the community that is suffering all of this, that is a misrepresentation of the facts. Now, politics, I have said, has also a role in some of these things. Don't forget that southern Kaduna is the only PDP senatorial district in the entire Northwest. That has implications for the way politics is run. There is a lot of interest. The PDP machine is interested, assuming that maybe somebody wants to use force to capture this that they have. There's PDP media, there's just everything everyone is throwing into this thing. So the thing is that we have to de-escalate tension in the place by ensuring even fair, balanced media, politicians to step back a bit and allow and the sermonization by some religious leaders. We've seen lately, for instance, there has been this video going viral all over the country about somebody saying people should be killed, behead them. And I hope that the security agencies really are doing something about it. I believe they would.
Who is saying that?
Well, unfortunately, the video is not branded. The name is not there. But it was very clear that this outrageous sermon, seditious as it was asking for the killing and the beheading of people. This is not Rwanda. This country does not deserve this. And I have the sense that that person has a lot of explanation to give. Well,
Mr. Shehu, I understand that we might need to go on another break in just a moment, but definitely the revelations that you're bringing out are quite disturbing. I'll bring in the perspective, the initial perspective of the state government when this crisis broke out, when we return from this break. Garba Shehu is still with us in the studio, and just before we went on that break, you were trying to give us the perspective of the presidency. You talked about how there's a communal clashes, but then that was not what we heard initially. I recall that sometime last year we understood that this crisis had its roots. The recent crisis, because Kaduna has had its own fair share of crisis, but the recent crisis stemmed from the 2011 post-election conflict. That was the governor had put forward. He said that some itinerant herdsmen were going back to their communities, and they were involved in that 2011 post-election crisis. And a lot of them, some of them decided to come back much later to take their revenge on communities, and that he had tried personally to reach out. According to him, this came out from General Aguirre report that was conducted on the root of the crisis in southern Kaduna for some time, and that was one of the findings of that committee. And that they tried to reach out to these people, especially those who were outside the country, to tell them that they had a new administration and they were willing to pay compensation to them That also drew criticism from some, certain areas, because people felt that if you're willing to compensate the herdsmen, why wouldn't they compensate the victims, who had been affected by this crisis as well? But that was a story from the Kaduna State government, that most of these marauders were not from within Kaduna, and that the people were living peacefully, as it were. But now you bring in the perspective of a communal clash. Where precisely? I mean, how do we reconcile these stories?
Because you have in place, largely in contention, so-called Fulani settlers. I don't know why anybody is called a settler in their own country, but I just illustrated the story of the itinerant herder who left a son with. These are people who had lived in these areas for generations upon generations, herding their own cattle, and the so-called natives who had believed that they had always been there, for as long as history can remember. The fight is ongoing. I think the very point that the governor of Kaduna had tried to make all along is that this crisis is a long-standing one. It's been there a long time. He mentioned that more than 10,000 lives had been lost, and that the problem has continued to perpetuate itself because people are not being punished for their roles in previous crises. We have had investigation upon investigation, report upon report to successive administrations in Kaduna. What can anybody do about this? Well, he says this time around it'll be different. That people would be brought to trial. They are already making arrests. So we hope that maybe that would have a deterrent effect on the continuous perpetuation.
But people believe that, even if the crisis was going to be between communities, how come some communities seem better armed than others? I mean, these people who come in with guns, shooting sporadically, they're not fighting with machetes. You have to ask, how is it that, they come in a militia-like fashion. And, some people just feel that there is more to this than meets the eye. Some people are already spinning controversy or conspiracy theories around it. I don't know if you've heard any of them. But then they believe that there is more to this than meets the eye. If you go through to what's happening in southern Kaduna, they're not the only ones who have that crisis. Down Taraba to Benue, and you just have pockets of this crisis. Even at some point, Nasarawa here also had to contend with that. In places like Namu, I mean, all of this, do we have like a security or an intelligence mapping that says that this is precisely what is going on, specifically affecting these communities, and this is the solution they're proposing?
I cannot say, as I sit here, whether there is this massive conspiracy you are alluding to, whether it is spawned from home or abroad or wherever. One thing I know, one thing I can tell you is that we have a problem because we have cattle herders who, by tradition, follow the grass, the green grass. And when they drive their cattle around looking for the green grass, the cattle stray into farmland and they eat up crops. And when that happens, the farmers fight back. And so you have all this on. And on the other hand also, then you have cattle rustling, which also has assumed a big dimension until recently when some things have been done about it. So when you snatch their cattle and then you kill and you eat up,